It's entirely in comic book form. My dissertation was a comic book. And it's not a thing where I wrote a bunch of stuff and then said, let's find pictures for it. It's something that was created through the act of drawing and the act of writing as one. So I really very much, it very much argues for the importance of visual thinking and visual making. But its genesis was through that as well. So had I written a text document and later drawn it, it would have been a very different, I would have gone in different directions, discovered different things. Well, I think it always has been important, but it's not been accepted. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think I lucked out in that I hit a time where comic books have been more accepted and people are embracing visual thinking at least a little bit more in schools and in higher ed. So I think I hit the right time where people were hungry for it, and I happened to have an argument that said why it mattered, and I was able to do it at the same time and had the support of my committee to go forth. So I think I think we are, as a larger society, recognizing that we make sense of things visually, and the more these messages aren't new. I mean, we've been reading about multimodality and visual, the aid intelligence. All those things have been around for a long time. But I think at the end of the day, we tend to still go back to one way of testing, one way of all those things. So I think to have somebody not just talk about those things, but actually demonstrate, I think that has a potential for a larger impact, because I think other people who are looking for, other schools, institutions are saying, we want to try this. They have some models to say, look, this was done and it happened to be done at this institution, and that helps. The reception's been fantastic. I mean, it's already being used in classrooms from high school philosophy to graduate arts-based research to education method. I mean, it's been, I don't know how many total, but it's in a lot of diverse classes already. Reviews and all those things have been extremely favorable, so I'll take that. And I think there's just a big interest in it. I did an interview with a paper in Brazil, and they did a review in Germany. I think there's a hunger around the world to see different ways of what education can look like. I think there's a greater interest in comics now, so to see those two things kind of smashed together, I think people are excited about it, and I think hopefully not just the novelty, but what I actually did within that has been resonating with people, to sort of push them to think differently. I didn't make a comic book that made things simple. I made a comic book that kept things pretty complex and hopefully was designed to bring people into a conversation rather than to keep them out. I think if you can make the case for it, you should do it. And if you really, I think, part of my goal with this thing was to be the last person who had to argue for its validity, that the next person coming around would just be able to do it. And part of that also is that instead of judging things about the form, that we're really interested in the quality of the work. So the form, I don't think, if you're doing something that doesn't relate to anything comics can do for you, and you just say comics are cool and I want to do this, but yet it'd be really a lot better if you did it with math equations or whatever. I don't think you should, I think you should really be conscious of using form to help your ends. So if the right person, if the person came to me and said, this is something I want to do and here's why it really means something and here's how I'm going to tackle it, then I'd say absolutely. And I'd hope that my experience could help them in some way to go forward. Yeah, that's interesting. Because mine, on one hand, is popular culture, and that it's comics, but I think the fact, and you asked about reception before, it's less seen as a comic, it's seen as a comic book, but it's more a comic book that's being read by non-comic book people than other things. But at the same time, obviously pop culture, is being used in so many different ways. Using superhero stories to look at morality, and looking at race and gender and those kinds of things through the lens of superhero movies or comics. So I think that's a really exciting time, because I think, these are things people sort of live in and breathe in, sort of bring them into, to bring that kind of stuff that's part of their world already into classrooms. The thinking skills are the same, whatever you're applying it to. So I think it's only beneficial